the media are viewed more as elites, and that's what Trump has played so beautifully. Because I always say Trump's not a Republican. He's best described as a right-wing illiberal populist. And one of the main elements of populism is distrust of elites, right? That's why so many people are anti-vax, because medical scientists, those are elites, and the media people are elites. And they do, again, kind of, even this is true of even some of the right wing or conservative outlets, they do have this ivory tower approach. Yeah. And it just sows a lot of distrust. So I
just think it's really weird that Trump is, the representative of, the proletariat, when the guy's a billionaire who poops in a gold toilet. And he represents the working people of America. That's just weird to me. I don't get it.
Growing up in New York, may I make a comment on that? Because one of the things that Trump has done so brilliantly is that if you look at the heavy hitters in New York real estate, guys like, the Spires or the Silversteins or Mort Zuckerman, any of those guys, they think Trump is some two-bit grifter from Queens who doesn't know what he's doing. He's always been a second-class citizen. And that's how a lot of his voters feel. They feel they've been left behind by globalization. They're losing their country. Their party has abandoned them. And so he's bonded with them on that feeling of resentment, right? Because when you get right down to Trump, it's white grievance politics. That's the best way to describe his success. And so he can bond with the voters, even though you're right, he is as opposite from them as he can be. His economic policies are as hostile towards them as they could be. He governed as a plutocrat, now as a populist, but he bonds with the voters because of that. And it's incredibly skillful.
He's really good at marketing and branding. He always has been. He's not a good businessman. Him and, it was funny, like a friend of mine and I were just discussing Robert Kiyosaki, is that his name? The guy who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Mm-hmm. And so many of my friends are like, bro, you got to read this book. And I'm like, bro, I read it. But I'm like, do you know how Kiyosaki got rich and stays rich? It's because of the book. He's done a really good job branding rather than because of his business decisions.
Well, someone in New York summed it up best. They said the only business success Donald Trump has ever had is selling the myth of his success.
Absolutely.
Which is no small achievement.
No, it's a really good skill that he has that is absolutely. And he didn't come up with Make America Great Again, but he made the slogan great. If that makes any sense. Like he knows how to market things. And one of the things he's marketed is the idea that not only, when there is a grievance among the white working class, he's marketed that as, not only, you're getting screwed, but he points the finger at not only individuals, but also institutions and says, here are the people who are screwing you every day. Now, if you really want to talk about people, and my friend Leonard Steinhorn talks about this a lot, you really want to talk about the people who are left behind. It's not the people in the Rust Belt. Go to the Mississippi Delta and talk to those people. Those are the real left behind people who are basically drinking raw sewage because, the pipes are rotted out and, they're the median income is $13,000. Like that's really where people are left behind. But again, we've marketed, this is why I say the right-wing media is better at marketing and the right-wing media is bigger, because they've made it seem like the Rust Belt counties in Wisconsin and other places, that those are the real people who are being left behind, and the globalist politics that have left them behind, and they're not making the same money, and immigrants are taking their jobs. And all of that is not fully borne out in fact when you look at some of the other people who are left behind, other Americans.
Look, just to kind of try and tie a bunch of things together that you guys were just talking about. Trump, populism itself is not a political ideology. It's not an ideology at all. It is a symptom of what occurs when a populace is ignored and doesn't have its political desires fulfilled. In other words, just like their ability to thrive. Right. So what do? They
inequality is what foments it the most.
Totally. 100%. So as you're watching, as wealth inequality continues to grow in the United States, as you're watching as the communities that people can remember thriving are now devastated, as you're watching, it's like I mentioned drugs because they really matter. You're watching more and more communities that are hollowed out by these sort of deaths of despair. That so you begin to realize you're like, wait a second, like the ruling class in Washington, regardless of whether or not it's Republican or Democrat, has really no interest in intending to any of this. Things have not improved. Things have gotten worse. They're like constantly engaged in foreign wars where they're actually killing the people who grew up in my neighborhood by deploying them to those wars without any sort of explanation for why they're going in the first place, any clear mission. And just goes on and on and on. It continues. And again, this is not a partisan point. These are Republicans and Democrats who have been doing this for decades. So at some point, you're like, I'm just going to turn to a radical means. And they turn to a guy. I mean, obviously, everyone's, we've now spent many years litigating how did Trump happen. But the reality is here, to go to Jason's question, how is it that the billionaire ends up representing kind of the average person, the working class? How could that be? Well, the truth is because he was a traitor to his class. He made that a part of his pitch. That he's like, look, Hillary Clinton went to my wedding. Why did she go to my wedding? I paid her. I gave her money. I know the inside game. And I'm going to use that knowledge to work for you now. And so people said, okay, I want that guy. I want that guy. Because, and every time Washington reacted with venom and said, he's disgusting. He's the worst. I can't believe you'd ever let anybody like that. What a rube. That only made him more appealing to the class that already had resentment for the people who are now screaming, how dare you? How dare you?